Welcome to Second Take, the show that focuses on the issues behind the news. France's Air Accident Investigation Agency has issued new safety recommendations together with the release of its third report into the crash of Air France Flight 447 in 2009. Keith Campbell joins me to discuss developments. Keith, does the third report offer any new insights into what happened on the 1st of June 2009?
I think it does, yes. I just want to point out that this is the third interim report. The final report is still to come. It's expected next year. That will have the final conclusions and the final safety recommendations. But this report does give us a better idea of what happened, or more accurately didn't happen, on the tragic flight. The clear result from this report is that the co-pilots on duty, the aircraft had a crew of one pilot and two co-pilots, and when the emergency started, the pilot was off the flight deck, he was resting. It is clear that the two co-pilots did not understand what was happening to the plane, and they failed to respond correctly to what was happening to the airplane. To sum up, the aircraft was cruising at an altitude of about 35,000 feet. What happened was that suddenly the airspeed indicators on the primary flight display and integrated instrumentation system diverged. They give different readings. The BEA thinks this was due to the formation of ice crystals in the pitot tubes, which are the instruments which measure airspeed. Under this circumstance, the autopilot cannot function. Modern computers and aircraft are very advanced, but they're not intelligent enough to deal with a problem like this. So automatically it switched itself off to pass the problem to the humans, and the aircrew had to take over. This is a situation called unreliable indicated airspeed, or unreliable IAS. There are procedures to deal with it. One of the pilots should have audibly declared unreliable IAS, and they should have immediately initiated the procedures to handle the situation. This did not happen. One of the pilots said, "I have the controls," but they did not initiate the correct and appropriate procedure. The BEA investigating the background of the co-pilots determined they had never been trained in manually flying an Airbus at cruise altitude, and they'd never practiced unreliable IAS procedures at cruise altitude. One of the recommendations is that this now be introduced in training for airline pilots. What followed was that the aircraft climbed as a result of the inputs being received from one of the co-pilots, and then stalled. The stall warning went off. At one point it was going for 54 seconds. Now the stall warning is a synthetic voice saying stall, 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 plus a tone. So this is to prevent it being confused with other alarm signals. Neither of the co-pilots made any reference to the stall warning, and neither declared a stall situation. When the captain returned to the flight deck, the plane was dropping out of the sky. Neither of the co-pilots gave him a proper briefing on what had happened and what they'd done to try and alleviate the situation. The captain was unable to determine what was going on before the plane hit the sea.
Can you outline some of the key recommendations that have now been made?
Well, I already indicated one, changes to training, to introduce training in unreliable IAS procedures and stall recovery at cruising altitude. The BEA is also making suggestions regarding the flight data recorders. They'd like more parameters recorded. Currently, what a flight data recorder does is that it records all the data from the instruments on the left-hand side of the cockpit, but not on the right-hand side. These are duplicates. But the BEA would like them to record data from both sides in case of disparities in the information being presented to the pilots. It makes things clearer. The other thing is that they want video recording of the flight deck as well. Now, the aim is not so much to see what the pilots are doing, but to see what the pilots see. So the BEA investigators have got lots of data on what the instruments were telling the pilots, but they don't have all the data on what all the instruments were telling the pilots. And this makes the actions of the co-pilots more obscure than they would otherwise be. So they would like video recorders so positioned that they can record all the instruments on the control panel. And then there are recommendations regarding the emergency locator beacons, that these could perhaps be activated automatically while the plane was still in flight if it enters an emergency situation. And likewise, that if a plane enters an emergency situation, key flight data would be immediately transmitted. So key data would be available actually before the plane hit the ground. Now, they have been doing some research into it, and it seems to be technically feasible. The point being that the pilots would not activate this, the computers would say we're in trouble, and the computers would activate these emergency systems.
Given all these investigations, will these new insights be integrated into the aviation sector?
Oh yes, it's only a matter of time. Look, the video cameras in the cockpit is very controversial. They were first proposed about 10 years ago. And pilots, for obvious reasons, don't like the idea. But I think the loss of Air France Flight 447 gives a strong impetus to achieving this. The other recommendations are much less controversial. Some of them still need final technical validation to ensure that they are actually feasible on a day-to-day basis. But there's no doubt that most, if not all, of these recommendations will be implemented. I can't give you a time scale for it, though. I mean, the final report only comes out next year with the final recommendations. Then there'll be discussions, consultations. Things that can be done rapidly will be done rapidly. Things that take time will take time. But likely we'll see most, if not all, these recommendations implemented.
Keith, thank you very much. That is the Second Take show for this week. Thank you for watching, and join us again next time for more news analysis.